All right, I'm going to get into a little bit of an update. As of December 23rd, 2022, IRS has decided to postpone the requirements on filing the 1099-K for third-party processors. So this is one of the things that got a lot of news and a lot of stuff going on, a lot of pushback to Congress and to the IRS, basically saying, "Hey, we don't like this," or if you look at social media, saying, "Hey, IRS, you're going after people who are on Venmo or PayPal that make $600. That's not fair. What are you going to do?" So IRS pushed it back. Let's kind of go into what it is and how it matters to people, I guess, is the best way to put it. But basically, what ended up happening is there are 1099-Ks, and the change deals with third-party processors. So what exactly is a third-party processor? Think of PayPal and Venmo probably as your best example. Basically, what we have is one person says, "Hey, I'm going to pay you. How do you want to get paid?" And they say, "Yeah, pay me via Venmo." And so the person then sends the money to Venmo, and the person receiving the money has to sign into Venmo themselves and say, "Hey, I want my money. Please send it to me." And then the money gets transferred to that person. So 1099-Ks are required by these third-party processors. The issue is they are only required right now if you have 200 transactions and received $20,000 or more. So just kind of think of that: 200 transactions and $20,000. Odds are the 200 transactions are the harder one to kind of trip up. But what we've seen is there are a lot of people that are using Venmo, using PayPal as a way to avoid getting a 1099. Because if you pay someone via Venmo or PayPal and you mark that it is being paid for goods and services, you do not need to issue a 1099 NEC. So what ends up happening then is there is a gap. No 1099 NEC, no 1099-K. All of a sudden, this income is not being reported to the IRS at all. So IRS says, Congress says, "Hey, we want to make sure all this income is getting reported. It's really important to us that people are reporting income." IRS estimated is close to $1 billion unreported income that is out there right now that this loophole would fix. So the change would be, instead of the 200 transactions and $20,000 received, if there is $600 or more received via Venmo or via PayPal or whatever other third-party processor you have, then the 1099-K gets issued. Now, the rule states that this is only for goods and services transactions. So if you sell something on eBay, it might get marked as a good, so that would probably count. If you do some work for someone, yeah, services is probably going to count. If you transfer money to your mother-in-law because she's watching your kid and they just want some money to go do stuff, then that's more of a gift. That wouldn't count. I bring that up because I actually just did that with my own mother-in-law. So things like that aren't going to get caught into these transactions. So you don't need to worry about, "Oh, hey, I gave so-and-so some money and I'm worried he's going to get caught by the IRS." Well, if you look at the actual taxation issues with it, a gift is not taxable. If you get a 1099 and it's a gift, it is still not taxable. One of the things that will come up, though, is how do we report that and how do we make sure it is shown as non-taxable? We'll talk about that in a minute. So what we had was the American Rescue Plan, and the American Rescue Plan came in 2021. And this said, starting in 2022, we're going to switch over to the $600 or more rule for our third-party processors. That guy was all the rage. It was talked about everywhere on social media. People were going into it and discussing it all at length. People were very upset. There was a lot of negative backlash over it. So the IRS said they're delaying it. We don't have exactly when they're delaying it to. It's probably going to be a year until they can get more accurate rules and regulations out for people. What's going to end up happening as well is we do know people are pushing Congress, telling Congress, "Hey, we don't like this rule. We want it changed." So maybe Congress will act and they will change it in that meantime. But for right now, we have a delay on it. And what are we going to do during this time period? So that delay just basically means no penalties are going to accrue if we don't file it. And it technically says we're supposed to because of that $600 threshold. So we want to make sure that going forward, we kind of know if it matters to us or not. We want to kind of instruct our clients, hey, make sure when you're sending this money, mark it as goods and transactions, or mark it not as goods and transactions if that's not what it is. So we do want to make sure that we do have it. Another thing that we want to kind of point out too is when we say that it's going to be for these 1099K transactions, only mark goods and services. Maybe I'm being a little cynical here, but I kind of feel like they're going to issue a 1099K anyway. These large payment processors, PayPal, Venmo, again, to use them as an example, they probably want to be more safe than sorry, right? They don't want to take a risk that they didn't issue one and face penalties by the IRS for not doing it. So they're probably going to be conservative and err on the side of, hey, you have the money, let's just issue a 1099K. Well, the IRS kind of came back and they said, okay, well, if you get an erroneous 1099K, just go back to the issuer and ask them for a correction. Now, I don't know if you've ever tried getting a corrected 1099 of any sort from anyone. It usually doesn't happen. They never want to do that. They just say, oh, too bad. You're stuck with this. And so what we typically do is we report it as income. So that way we don't set off the IRS matching notices, right? The CP 2000 saying, hey, why didn't you report this? And then we back it out. One thing I want to point out is IRS uses something known as a diff function. The diff function is going to say, hey, this return is scored really high because there's a lot of things that we have errors on. One of the things that kind of triggers that diff function is if you have things that are not really the same year to year. So I just want to point out, if we are backing out the income, make sure we back it out the same consistently, whether we back it out as other income or as an expense. Make sure you do that year to year to year. Because odds are, if the issue popped up in 1 year, it's going to happen for many more years to come with that client. So we do want to make sure that we are doing that. And then that's the general 1099 rule for anything. So the point is kind of moot for 2022 because we were not going to be getting all these 1099Ks that we were expecting. But it's eventually going to happen. We do see some states, even though we don't have this requirement from federally anymore, some states do have the requirement at that $600. I'm here in Virginia. Virginia is one that has a $600 requirement. So we do know that people will probably get them if their state is one that is complying with a $600 rule. So keep that in mind. Just know federally, you're not going to see it. State-wise, you still might see it depending on the state you're in. All right, so that's our quick little update. Hope you have a good day.